Welcome back with another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With you, as always, Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Big edition. Week 1 is in the books. Who are the threats to the Kansas City Chiefs? We'll talk about that. Kind of review who looked good, who did not look good after losing to New England. What are the Cincinnati Bengals? After losing to the Patriots, what are the Cincinnati Bengals? How much of a threat are the Chargers, the other team in the AFC West that won? We'll take a look at the two that lost as well. What does Dak's new deal mean for Patrick Mahomes and his contract in the future? Tyreek Hill has more off-the-field drama. Did the Chiefs get off the merry-go-round at just the right time? And what will this week's storylines be as we look ahead to Week 2 with the Kansas City Chiefs? It all happens right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Time as we go a little bit late here today, but we wanted to give everybody a chance. Presidential debate was on. If you're catching us later via the podcast, normally we go 8:30 on a Tuesday. We're going 10 a.m. on Friday, trying to give you the review and the look ahead. We forgot about the presidential debate when we talked about this last Friday, but giving everybody a chance. So we're going a little bit late. What are we, 9:50? p.m. right now, so not too bad here overall, but now off and running with the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. And Jeff, let's start with this subject. Week 1, biggest threats to the Kansas City Chiefs. Who jumped out at you as somebody that the Chiefs need to be keeping their eye on?
Well, it felt like most of the teams were in the NFC side of it. And so, I mean, I was really impressed with Philly. I was impressed with Green Bay. They lost Jordan Love. Certainly the Lions and the Niners showed up as the two other really impressive teams throughout the weekend. And so I think on the AFC side, it was really the Chiefs that really stood out. But, you know, if I'm picking a team on the AFC side of it, I'm going with Houston. It felt as if Joe Mixon running the football the way he did, giving them a great run game. The pass defense was a little bit shaky, but I have to figure they'll get that figured out. But ultimately, it felt like Buffalo and Cincinnati, Baltimore, all those teams that we expect to be in the mix, the Jets as well, they all underwhelmed to a certain degree.
Yeah. Sam, anyone jump at you that you thought, this is somebody that, we got to look out for if we're the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll preface it by saying that I think people overreact to week 1 on the NFL drastically. But the best two teams we saw were the two teams that played for the Super Bowl a year ago. I mean, the Chiefs were really impressive, I thought, on Thursday night. The 49ers were impressive on Monday night. But, to Jeff's point of just looking at the AFC, because that's potentially where you could face a road game, I just think it could potentially be different there. I still think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, the team that the Chiefs just beat. And it's why I last Friday on this podcast, I talked about what an impressive win that was, because the Ravens won more games in the AFC than any team in football last year. And the Chiefs beat them and played really well offensively against the number 1 scoring defense in the league last year. Having said that, the Ravens were still a toe away from potentially going for 2 to win that game on the road against a 2-time defending champion. So I still think the Ravens are the biggest threat, but I'll throw one stat out there that kind of contradicts a lot of what I just said, which is, there's never been an AFC team that has lost to the Chiefs in the regular season and come back and beat them in the playoffs. Yeah. They've lost twice to AFC teams in the playoffs. Both times, that team has not only believed they could beat the Chiefs, but has already proven earlier in that same season that they could beat the Chiefs. And so the Ravens are going to have to do something that no team's done if they are going to be the Chiefs' biggest threat, which is rebound mentally and just have the psyche to believe you can win that game if you play again. It's why these games are so important to the opposition when they're playing the Chiefs. And obviously we've got another one this week.
Yeah. I think, listen, week one is overreaction, Monday, right? For everybody is like, we've got one game to look at. And so that's it. We're going to draw these wide ranging conclusions. I do think Houston looked pretty good. I agree with what Jeff said. I thought Baltimore looked pretty good. Like they were a toe away from going for the win on a 2-point conversion, one that I think they would have gotten, as we talked about last Friday on the podcast. I think we all agreed that they were going to get it. The Chiefs defense looked worn out, but they didn't score the touchdown, right? There are rules. There's a limit to where the field is, but Baltimore looks salty, like they can go toe to toe and they're not intimidated. Didn't like how Buffalo started, and maybe that's a reason to hold against them, but they finished strong. And so I think Buffalo remains a threat for the Kansas City Chiefs. But I kind of like what Jeff said about the NFC, because the thing about the NFC is, other than the games you got to play during the regular season, the 5 games you play during the regular season, you only got to beat one of them, right? So it did. I think if anything, we maybe started to see that the balance of power is equalizing. I think there's been a feeling that 3 of the 4 or 4 of the 5 best teams have been in the AFC, with maybe 2 or 3 of the next group, maybe a 3-to-1 ratio on the next group were in the AFC. I thought Philly looked salty. I thought Green Bay looked good. Even, they lost ultimately, but when they get Jordan Love back, I think they look like a good team. Lions look good. Cowboys had an impressive showing. We'll see. Cowboys seem to cowboy most of the time. Gotta love what the Niners did. And I think that's good for business if maybe some of the, the balancing out that's going on, some of the depth, Cincinnati obviously did not look good. And if we're starting to see some of the, the AFC and NFC balance out, then you don't have as rocky a road to get there, which it hasn't prevented the Chiefs from getting there the last 2 years, when it was definitely the tougher side of the bracket to get to. So I don't know that anything from week one, I don't think there was any bad news. Can we put it that way? Was there any bad news for the Chiefs? Like, Houston looks pretty good, but I think we expected them to look good. But Jeff, did they look so good to you that you're like, wow, they've now caught up?
Yeah, I think that when they play each other, it will be a good game. Like the takeaway I had from the Chiefs-Ravens game, and I agree with what Sam said, that the Ravens are right there. It's a question, can they make those plays to win those games? It's one thing to be neck and neck, but when someone starts to pull away, can you recover? And they haven't shown that ability. But yeah, I feel like the Chiefs are going to have a lot of battles throughout the course of the year, because they're always going to start fast, because Andy Reid's a master at preparing teams, and you've got Patrick Mahomes, and people haven't seen what they're throwing at you. But over time, that stuff begins to even out. The one thing I'll say about the NFC teams that impressed me the most was that a lot of those teams had questions about chemistry and off the field stuff going on. So for them to start as fast as they did showed me that stuff is a little bit overrated when it comes to playing in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point for sure. Listen, we're let me do this. We'll pay the bills. How about this? I'm excited about this. I'm excited about paying the bills, because we have a new way of paying the bills. So I'm just going to say I'm giddy about this. We always give love to our sponsors, like David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. How about this? Just to tell you that we're ever working to make the Red, Gold, and Bold better in every way we possibly can. As you guys know, we're always brought to you by our friends at David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gay and Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns cold. Weekends are booking up fast. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gay and Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. High tech is what I'm going to tell you. High tech we are here at the Red Gold and Bold podcast. There's no way you can deny that we aren't stepping up in the world when you see that kind of high tech production value here. So just understand, not only is it the most informative, but we're becoming little by little the most high tech podcast out there. Let's shift our view to the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's zero in on them, Jeff. What do we take away? The Bengals are what now? I think 1-10 right now in this tenure. In the first 2 weeks of the season, 1-10. So I don't think you can draw any long conclusions that the Bengals are dead based on that, because they are notorious slow starters. But does this look different to you? Do the holdouts and the fact that it's a primary receiver that wasn't in practice all along? Does it look different that maybe this isn't just a slow start, but maybe there's, more to worry about here?
Well, because the Patriots were involved in this, it looks different. That's a team that I think most people believe is going to end up picking first in the draft, if not in the top 3 next April. And so that was surprising. And the way they won the game, which was just really very simplistic game plan, just run the football, play defense. You didn't see a lot of big plays from Joe Burrow. They didn't have, I think they had a couple 230 yards of total offense. So not the Bengals we're used to seeing, but your point's accurate that this is what they do. They tend to start slow. They tend to look really bad. I think every debut they've had in the last 3 years has been pretty ugly. And so I caution people to never underestimate talent. and Joe Burrow is still there. Jamar Chase is still there. They still have a lot of people on defense who can make plays. I fully expect them to come in here thinking that they can win and having a pretty good chance of winning, because they hate this team. The Chiefs hate them. And that just creates a whole different level of momentum and energy that I think is going to be not what we saw from them over the weekend.
Yeah. What did you see out of the Bengals? Just the same old slow start, the same old flaws that they always have, or is there something bigger there from your standpoint, Sam?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned it, they haven't played well over the first 2 weeks of the season. Joe Burrow, I think, is 1-7 or 1-8 in the first 2 weeks alone. So this isn't just a Bengals problem. It's specifically been Joe Burrow too. But man, it's got to feel different when it's the Patriots. All 3 of us a week ago on this podcast predicted who would get the number 1 pick next year. All 3 of us said the New England Patriots were going to be the worst team in football this year. And, I think it's every bit as much as what the Bengals weren't doing as much as what the Patriots do. I mean, Jeff mentioned their total offense, 224 yards of total offense. Next Gen Stats showed that Joe Burrow had the 3rd lowest pressure rate of his career. Like, this was a situation made for good offense, and during the 3rd lowest pressure rate of his career, his yards per attempt on those throws was 5.6. Like, this was a Joe Burrow without T. Higgins, with a Jamar Chase that had only practiced a few days before playing in his first NFL game of the season. I mean, what better time to get the team that we all think? I don't think I'm stepping out of line here when I say you guys agree that there's one team in football that is probably not fearing coming into Arrowhead Stadium because of their history against the Chiefs, and it's Joe Burrow and the Bengals. But there's no better time to get that team than right now.
I agree there's no better time now because they are notorious slow starters, and it does carry over to week 2. But is there any sign that they can fix that problem? That there were a couple of wacky things that kind of went the Patriots' way in getting that win. So listen, you sleepwalk through a game, you're already looking ahead to the Chiefs. That's the big game. They had read all the press clippings about how bad the Patriots are. Maybe they're not maybe it's not same old Bengals. It was just this game was the total look-ahead game to the Chiefs, Jeff, and we got the worst edition of the Bengals, and now you're going to get the best edition of the Bengals in week 2. Which do you think? Still trying to get things going the way they always do, or maybe a chance to see the best of the Bengals, in week 2 because of how bad they were against the Patriots?
Oh yeah, I certainly feel like you're going to get the best of the Bengals. And look, I'm not a big believer in the NFL that you have, like in college football, you have this, or we're playing whatever, blind man you or whatever, and you're going to roll through them, and it's not going to be an issue. But it is surprising how little they tried to do to open up their offense in this game, which clearly they had the opportunities to do it. And I'll compare that to what happened with Buffalo, who fell behind by 14 points to Arizona, and then all of a sudden Josh Allen just hits the turbo button and they just take off, end up winning that game. Like, for whatever reason, the Bengals didn't have that in them. But I just know it's like when they play the Chiefs, it's just a whole different level of, they're out to prove something against the Chiefs. And it's the Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali, it's the Lakers, Celtics, it's Yankees, Red Sox. It's that level of energy when these two teams play. And so I don't think that's going to change. And people are talking about Jamar Chase is going through his money thing, and T. Higgins was banged up. I even think maybe Higgins didn't play in that game because they wanted to see if he could be around for this game, because it means a lot to them too. Sam is right. These games now are going to factor a lot at the end of the season when they're determining who's going to have the top seed.
It only matters, though, Sam, for the Bengals late, if you keep pace with the Chiefs in the other games, right? So, and that's one of the things. The Chiefs have their stinkers too, right? I remember I think in their first Super Bowl year, or the second.
Well, we remember last year at Christmas. We don't have to date back that far.
Right? That's right. And even when they have it going well, they've had their moments where they have their stinkers. So no one game defines a team. And yeah, you're absolutely right in bringing up the Raider game. The Bengals, though, I do think this is different in the sense that this is that young core, and now everybody's looking to get paid. And how do you handle and listen, Chris Jones was looking to get paid last year. But let's be clear, holdouts or hold-ins, as the case was with Jamar Chase, have been around, and the Chiefs have had theirs as well. They had contracts they were working on with Harrison Butker, with Creed Humphrey this year. So there were guys looking to get their check as well. Maybe it's because they handle it better. I don't know. I don't know that the Chris Jones thing was handled any better than the Jamar Chase one was, except he was out. Maybe the hold-in thing is worse for the teams, because then it is the constant distraction. The guy is there. It's not just a couple of questions and move on. He's right down the way in the locker room. He's answering questions. Is it possible that, and the Bengals are notoriously cheap, that there is an implosion that's going on, and maybe they can't find that chemistry now that everybody's looking to get their payday?
Yeah, I think everything you said is valid, and let's add one thing to it. Do you guys have concern about Joe Burrow? This injury that he suffered last year is something that has the potential, I think, to be lingering into a season. Now, he faced questions of it because his performance was so bad on Sunday that he had to take questions on it from reporters after the game and try to dismiss that the wrist is not a thing at all. But we were told in the offseason, by some credible reports that would affect him and the way he was able to grip the ball, and therefore how hard he's able to throw the ball. And I still think you look at all the underlying numbers, and Joe Burrow was just really bad on Sunday. The Bengals, of all problems that they had, and everything you mentioned is valid, Soren. I didn't think that Joe Burrow would be at the top of the list. And I thought he was at the top of the list on Sunday for the reasons that they could not move the football.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Do you think Joe Burrow's healthy, Jeff?
Well, if you watch some of that game, there were moments in there where you saw him kind of playing around with his hand, playing around with his wrist. You don't know if he got banged up or if it was stiff or whatever, but there obviously was something happening at different moments with that part of his body. And so, that does give you pause. But again, I feel like this game coming up here is really, as much as it's about their quarterback, it's also about the Chiefs quarterback, because the Bengals have been able to give Patrick Mahomes problems. And Lou Anarumo, they moved some people around. I think some smart moves that were kind of underrated because people don't pay attention to the Bengals defense as much. But they moved Daxton Hill from safety to corner, and they brought in Geno Stone. They brought back Von Bell, and that gives Lou Anarumo two veteran safeties who are way more capable When they lost Jesse Bates and Von Bell last year, that defense took a huge dip. And so to get those guys back and to be able to have them, man in the back end of their defense, I think is a huge, huge help to what they are hoping to do as far as slowing the Chiefs down.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into predictions a little bit later on. We do it on Friday as to how we think this game is going to play out. But it is a big one. Like, there's a lot at stake. One, to put the Bengals down 0-2. They've given the Chiefs the opportunity to put what was supposed to be one of their biggest rivals 2.5 games in the rearview mirror with the head-to-head tiebreaker that they would hold, and really, penalize the Bengals for being so slow and sloppy getting out of the gate. They'd have the Ravens and the Bengals, which is important because, as we point out, Chiefs get 2 home games right out of the gates. That's great to get a great start, but it means 9 of the last 15 are on the road. So it is important to take care of business against the Cincinnati Bengals. We're always brought to you here as well by our friends at Northland Injury Law. Proud to bring you the Red, Gold, and Bold. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. Choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Let's talk a little bit about the Los Angeles Chargers. The only AFC West team to win was the Chargers. How impressed were you? They did it at the expense of the Raiders. How impressed were you, Jeff, and what you saw out of Jim Harbaugh's Chargers?
I liked it. And it's exactly what I thought they're going to be, no matter how many big-name people they end up adding down the road. That's how they're going to play football. It was very much about the ground game. It was very much about the defense. It was very much about limiting mistakes. And I don't know if J.K. Dobbins is going to stay healthy for an entire season, because I don't think he's ever done it in his NFL career. But if they're able to mine something out of that, get some of the other guys going, Ladd McConkey, for example, the other running back they got from Baltimore, Gus Edwards. I mean, it's not going to be pretty, but you saw that they were able to beat the Raiders just by playing smart football. And that is a huge, huge change around that organization. So, yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Tommy says, can Harbaugh ground and pound his way to the Super Bowl? I don't know.
Not with that bunch.
Might be premature to be talking Super Bowl, but can he ground and pound his way to a playoff spot, Sam? Can he ground and pound his way towards a win against the Chiefs, at least just splitting the series?
Yeah, I mean, I predicted that the Chargers would make the playoffs mostly because of the game plan that to Jeff's point, that we saw Jim Harbaugh execute, which is, I think the way I described the Chargers over the years was they're a team that shoots themselves in the foot, and they finally have a coach that might not shoot himself in the foot over the course of the season. They won a game with Justin Herbert throwing for 144 yards. Like, I don't know what version of the Chargers we expected over the past 4 years to be able to do that, because they were so dependent. And look, rightfully so. I mean, I think Justin Herbert's a terrific talent. Like, why wouldn't you lean on him? But they proved that they don't have to lean on that quarterback to win a football game. And, you get sacks out of your 2 edge rushers with Bosa and Mack. You run the ball extremely well, and you don't turn the ball over the entire game, and you force 3 turnovers. I mean, that is like an NFL recipe to win the game, is win the turnover battle, pressure the quarterback on the opposition, and just don't make mistakes. I mean, it's the cliche thing that Andy Reid says when the Chiefs don't play well, is he starts listing those items that didn't go well over the course of a game for the Chiefs. But the other thing I'd add is Joe Alt completely took Max Crosby out of the game. He did not allow a pressure in the entire game. And I know these top 5 picks, when teams don't get that many opportunities to pick in the top 5, the sexy thing is to pick the playmaker. And there was a lot of talk in LA among the few Chargers fans that are out there to, hey, you got to go get Malik Neighbors. He's a talent that you don't have. They had an obvious need at wide receiver. They went with the boring left tackle pick, and he's going to be, I think, a bigger contributor for them and a much better fit for what they need.
Well, and that's what, despite, there was some pump fakes thrown. Maybe he was trying to drum up some business for a trade down or something, but that he was going to take a quarterback there, and and that ended up being bunk. He wants to control the line of scrimmage. It's line of scrimmage football, and then he figures you can build off that. If I can control the line of scrimmage, then I can do the other things. I do think it bears the question, Jeff. Was this more Chargers or more Raiders? Right, like. Have the Chargers cleaned things up, and so now they won't shoot themselves in the foot. So now they're a 9-8-ish team that the Raiders made look good. The Raiders also, and it was pointed out there about the won't go for it on fourth down here. Pig one said, or pig number one, pig one number one said, and you play a coach that won't go for it on fourth down. The Raiders had, with 7 minutes to go, a 4th and 1 at the Chargers 42 and punted. That's kind of. I don't know that you got the team that can just donate away an offensive possession. So what was it? More Chargers or more Raiders in that game? Is this just a classic week one overreaction?
I'd say it's more Chargers just because you look at their talent pool. It's not what it was the last few years. And people talk about it was the Raiders. Well, that most of those guys were on the team that beat the Chiefs last year on Christmas Day. So it's not as if, they still have a lot of talent on defense. The quarterback situation is not ideal, but Gardner Minshew is not a bum. Sam's right. These are the kind of games the Chargers would have lost or found a way to lose any time within the last 5 years. And the fact that they didn't do it speaks to they're just better coach now.
Yeah.
Speaking of the coaching disparity, can we mention Antonio Pierce's 4th down decision late in that game?
I did. I did.
Well, no, I'm saying in this context, there's a thing called Cowardly Index that rates punts, and it was the 99.9th percentile in terms of cowardly punts. 1990. It's as cowardly a move as you can make.
It was. Yeah, listen, Antonio Pierce is looking like a great, maybe the great assistant coach. But now that you got your finger on the button, like that one, I just, particularly when you're at that point, it's clear you're punching up a weight class, right? At least on this day. Maybe you'll prove later to be the better team, but on this day, you're trying to get back at the Chargers. You cannot donate a possession like that. And so I did not think there was much to like out of the Raiders. In fact, I think it could be a long, cold winter. And I love Jeff's point about Joe Alt and controlling the line of scrimmage. That's what Harbaugh wants to do. And I think the other thing it does, if you can control the line of scrimmage, then it magnifies what you can do coaching-wise. Yep. Right? You can coach, and we see the Chiefs protect their tackles and do some things with chipping and that kind of stuff. That's coaching. That's scheming, right? But I'll bring in a team from outside the AFC West. Like the Jets players are definitely good, right? Basically on paper. But when you watch that Monday night game, what were the schemes? Where was the gotcha moment? Where was the guy running wide open, where you're like, oh, how the hell did that happen, right? Like they here's something new that they came up with. The 49ers seem to have seen everything that the Jets were going to run at them. And, no offense to Robert Salah and
Hackett,
but there was nothing creative about what they were doing. And, the 49ers have question marks on their offensive line. They got a rookie that's in there. They end up celebrating the Kansas kid and how he's playing. And I'm sure he played very well. I'm not trying to take anything away, but that's a kid who should have been exposed in his first NFL game, right? If you've got something for him, and this Jets defense is so badass. My point to that is, I think that, and I will admit Kyle Shanahan and his group, excellent coaching, right? But I think Pierce, I think one thing I want to see is Jim Harbaugh do it again. I want to see Jim Harbaugh match wits with Andy Reid, right? We know that'll be the ultimate test, because I do think Antonio Pierce kind of got a dunce hat put on him in this game. And so
he did, but those are the games the Chargers need to win. I mean, I agree with you that I'm interested to see how Jim Harbaugh matches up against Andy Reid. But what the Chargers haven't been able to do for 3 or 4 years is just win the games they need to win.
Yeah, but the only reason you say it that way is because we've completely dismissed Antonio Pierce from having any kind of success, right? It's still a referendum on him. It's still his first year as a coach, and he's got even a little more experience with this team, so they should have been the sharper team, and they weren't. Right?
Yes, totally agree. But those are the advantages that the Chargers have not taken advantage of for the past 3 or 4 years, and that's the Chargers' path to the playoff. As great as it would be if they beat the Chiefs for that program and for Jim Harbaugh, getting the playoffs, like, it doesn't require beating the Chiefs. It requires winning these games when teams hand them to you.
Yeah. No, I think we're in complete agreement there. Anything about the Chargers that you think, oh boy, this is something that's going to get exposed? That the Raiders just weren't able to expose. I mean, I thought they looked pretty solid. I thought Ladd McConkey making plays goes a long way towards calming the nerves about all the receivers, letting Mike Williams go, letting Keenan Allen go. Ladd McConkey looks like a baller, right? Like, so, and do I think any receiver in a Jim Harbaugh offense is going to go for 1,600 yards? No. But can he go for 1,008? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what the Niners had when Jim Harbaugh was taking the 49ers there. So I didn't see the problem there. You guys mentioned the pass rush. Bosa, we'll see if he's healthy. I know Tommy threw it up there, 11 and a half games, the over-under on how much Bosa plays. I don't know. Maybe coaching will have something to do with that. I don't know how much, Jeff, how you practice them and,
yeah.
And maybe just the respect of guys are more willing to fight through an injury if they believe in the coach and what they're doing, and they see the light at the tunnel. They see the playoffs. Maybe guys, the little knick-knack injury that guys have sat out for, maybe they push through it now.
Yeah, no, Harbaugh's going back to his Michigan days, he brought a lot of the people who were involved in the strength and conditioning over there with him. And these guys are very new age in their approach to it and very big on making sure guys are able to stay healthy. And, I'm not getting too deep into the weeds of the stuff that they do, but that was a big thing for them. I mean, he doesn't play music at practice. Like he makes it very old school. He makes it very much about like, we're going to work. We're going to be blue collar here in everything we do. And it's very easy when you're in Manhattan Beach, wherever they're training, you have to just be chill and go out there and practice and the sun's shining and you're going to go get your lattes and kick it wherever you're going to go after it. But it's like he's got those guys playing in a certain way. The thing that can get exposed in them is that can they win a shootout? If they're playing the Chiefs and the Chiefs got it rolling, can they win the game 35-34? I don't think they're built to do that right now, but they're not going to try to play games, at that pace.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's a whole new personality for them. And they seem to be embracing it. You see in the locker room, what they're showing, how the players are reacting, throwing out the worm is turned. And they seem to be, Jim Harbaugh can look a little hokey, but everybody seemed to be buying in to what they were watching there. Again, we're always brought to you by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations: North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Contract that was laid out for Dak Prescott, gentlemen, and that was $240 million over 4 years, Sam, $60 million per. First of all, reaction to Dak Prescott getting that much money, then we'll talk about what it means for the Chiefs. Were you shocked by the number that ultimately came down?
No, I mean, I've always had the philosophy that basically if your guy is in this like top 8 or so, then you're just going to have to pay him the most money. I think what teams get in trouble is when they have, for instance, the guys like Trevor Lawrence, the guys that are more in the top 12 range, and then you pay them all sorts of money, and I think then you're stuck. I think Dak does fit into the top upper class to actually pay him. So no, the number did not surprise me, and it didn't really bother me either.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff? What was your reaction when you saw the numbers?
Same as Sam's, but I thought this was trending towards, let's see what happens after the season or towards the end of the season. Can he make a playoff run? If he can't, then maybe it's a Kirk Cousins type situation where they just say, let's move on and find somebody else, because there's a growing belief in the NFL, and GMs won't say it out loud, but that it's almost makes more sense if you can't have a Patrick Mahomes or someone of that caliber, that you're just going to have to build a great roster and hope to find that quarterback who can get you through, as what the Niners did, or as what the Bears did when they got, lucked into getting that draft pick that became Caleb Williams. But I agree with Sam. I mean, when you're paying mid-tier quarterbacks crazy money, there's no way Tua or Trevor Lawrence are ever going to beat a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, or a Joe Burrow in a playoff game. Yeah, now Dak may have more success because he's in a conference you don't have that level of quarterback play, but it's still, I thought it might get. I thought it was going to a place where they might say, we've already given you one big contract and we haven't gotten the championship or NFC championship game out of it. So why are we going to keep doing this? But they did it.
I hate to admit it, but I was surprised because I kind of thought what you were saying, Jeff, was going to happen, that they were like, okay, we're not going to pay this money. You haven't proven to be good enough, and we're going to walk away. Most owners are terrified of the fear of the unknown at the quarterback position, and so they'll go ahead and pay to just keep the status quo, to stay competitive, to try to keep selling tickets. And I thought, well, man, Jerry's getting old and cantankerous, and he's going to go ahead and go against conventional wisdom and go another direction. Stupid me. It was what Jerry always does, right? Maximize the coverage of the Cowboys and himself all throughout training camp, all throughout the offseason, all the way up to the regular season. And then he pays CeeDee Lamb right at almost the top value. And then he gives Dak the highest contract, highest APY, at least on a contract. I am shocked. And kudos to, I know who was it, Tyler. He wasn't shocked. He said, not shocked at all. Cares more about getting attention than winning. You're right. I'm the idiot. I was like, ooh, here it's going to be different. And by doing that, he reset the market quite a bit. This does affect Sam, the Chiefs, in the sense that he didn't just push it up a little bit. He pushed it up quite a bit more. We know Patrick Mahomes is going to top whatever when the Chiefs get around to it. What does this now mean for the Chiefs? What kind of number are we looking at for him? And does it expedite when they have to get to addressing his contract?
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes showed his cards a year ago when he insisted on being re-upped. What was it in September of last season? That there is a level in which he does get uncomfortable with being underpaid, and there's always this disguise of, hey, I've got to bring the market up. Well, Dak Prescott just took care of that. Like, Mahomes is not obligated to take care of the market. We've seen this offseason. What has it been, 3 times now, where the quarterback market has been reset. Like, it happens without Patrick Mahomes being responsible or the person to make it happen. But like I said, there's a level to where he's uncomfortable with it. And to me, it's not as much about Dak getting $60 million. It's about Mahomes is not in the top 10. And I think that is the level of discomfort for Patrick Mahomes. If he's not in the top 10 or close to the top 10, somewhere, right bordering there, I think this offseason we're going to be talking about this conversation again with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff? When do you think it comes around? Did this expedite it? And do you think that he will resetting the market is acknowledging you're the best and that you have to push the number no matter where it was?
Yeah. I'd give it a couple years because you're talking about Josh Allen coming back around here pretty soon. CJ Stroud getting paid pretty soon here. Brock Purdy's going to get paid. Who else am I missing here? Probably missing somebody else who's pretty prominent. But it's, it's when he signed that deal, I had a number of different people say, yeah, I think it'll be torn up within like 5 or 6 years. They'll redo the deal. And as much as the numbers sounded great when he signed it, and Sam's totally right about this. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks who are going to make a lot more money in 10 years on the pace he's going than what he's going to get. And that's going to upset anybody who's got an ego, and everybody in the NFL has one. And so, yeah, I definitely think it's going to get. He'll have some kind of new deal probably within a couple of years.
I think it's next off season, right? I think that's when it has to come about, because I think so many guys have gone past him that I think you expect, like you said, I thought Sam made a good point. If you got a top 8 guy, top 25% guy, he's probably going to reset the market. But I think what Jerry Jones did, I think he did it mostly for his own self-aggrandization, and that is, look, I've got the highest paid guy. Look, look how much money I have. I pay these guys all this money. But I think it does. I think Patrick Mahomes, when he says that, it's twofold, kind of what Sam was getting at. That one, he says, I'm here doing what's right for the quarterback market and making sure everybody gets paid, at the position, because I know I'm a union guy and we're all in it together. And so I'm doing my part to drive that salary. But any money that the quarterbacks are getting paid is just taking money from another position. So it is just a quarterback club that you're protecting.
Yeah, there's a salary cap.
Yeah, there is a salary cap. And so there's that. But I also think that it is a little bit of a cover fire for, I'm getting the number one deal, right? Because I'm number one. It is the validation that you're the top dog. The players can vote, and he can count out 1, 2, 3, 4 when he goes fourth on the top 100 on your network, Jeff. But the one thing that really validates you're the best is when you get paid the most. And I think the Chiefs are going to have to probably check in on that at most every 3 years. But I think probably every couple of years if there's a wave of all these young quarterbacks. Now, I think after this, do we see the next wave? Do you see – do we have any other quarterbacks that you're like, boy, that guy's going to get paid? You know, we knew in year – what, was it year 2 Joe Burrow was getting paid? Or year 3? Yeah. After that, we knew this guy's getting paid. Tua, we knew last year was getting paid. We knew Trevor Lawrence was playing well enough. He was going to get paid. But do we have that next wave coming? I don't know.
Purdy's coming.
Yeah, what
Purdy's going to get more.
That's true. Yeah.
And he's only got 4 years instead of 5 because he doesn't have the fifth-year option for being taken in the first round. But, you know, part of the brilliance of what Patrick Mahomes has done by barely topping the previous guy is in this conversation that we're having right now comes up every season. And so how many times can Patrick Mahomes be the highest paid player in the league? He's already done it twice. And now we're talking about him potentially next off season, as soon as next off season, having this conversation again. You know, first 10 years of this guy's career, we could be talking about him 5 times being the highest paid player at his position because he doesn't do what Dak Prescott just did and reset the market by $4 million. He resets it at these times when other quarterbacks are coming up to where he knows he's going to get pushed down the ladder fairly quickly. And then guess what? Well, now I'm 12th. Let's talk about that. Let's have this conversation again.
Yeah, and I think it's a relevant time, and I think it's good for the Chiefs. I mean, all this money being paid to all these other quarterbacks means there's that much less money to pay all the players around them. And so, you know, they're on a nice trajectory. I think the other thing is they quietly do things like when they renegotiated last year where they give him a bunch of cash, but like somehow the agent seems to be on board with not putting all the details out because, you know, his contract now gets really hard to put your arms around because they move money forward. And so that adds to his guaranteed money total, which is always an underrated part of his contract, that 2 years are always flipping over there. But like the numbers that people quote are usually the numbers from when he originally signed it. And that's not really what that contract is right now. And I do think that's, you know, maybe boded well for the Chiefs. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe now he's going to want a contract that definitively says he's the highest paid guy. Right. Yeah. And I think, and if there's one element of this contract I want to bring up that I think is of note, and that is the fact that 231 of 240 million was guaranteed. This is the closest we've gotten. We've been getting closer. Lamar Jackson was really close to, you know, almost all of it being guaranteed, but they're getting very close to it all being guaranteed. I think a couple of things. One, the rolling guarantee, as I said, is a very underrated part of Patrick Mahomes' contract. But I think he's going to want to have the number one contract. That's the number one most dollars, the number one most guaranteed money. And I think he's going to want it to be more definitive. I think he's going to want the entire contract guaranteed. And I think
Deshaun Watson, that's what.
And I think we've now reached, like when Deshaun Watson was the outlier. Okay, the Chiefs did a great job of giving him a lot of guaranteed money and constantly guaranteeing more. But now that everybody else is pretty much getting 98% of the Deshaun Watson treatment, he's going to want 100% of it. So I think the Chiefs are going to have to guarantee all of it. And I think he's going to want definitively the highest APY and not like, well, when you look at this and you move this around and this is what it is. I do think that's going to mean that they got to come forward with a big number. And some guys are going to go bye-bye to make that fit a couple of years down the road.
Talking like 70 million.
Yeah.
And Soren, throw Rhett's comment up there that he had at 10:30 about whether or not Mahomes would want to leave if they offered him $50 million instead. Because I hear that a lot. And I think it is like a valid question for people to ask. Would Mahomes take less? Or does he actually want to, try this somewhere else for that money? The whole point with what we've seen with NFL history is this is how things start to go sideways. We saw with Aaron Rodgers, like the reason he's playing in New York is because this contract situation, like it does not take a lot to piss off quarterbacks in the NFL. And the wise decision is don't do anything remotely that could do it. Because if you've got one of the top 5 guys who are this franchise caliber player, part of your job is to make them happy. Part of your job is to keep their friends on the practice squad. It's drafting Bronny James to appease LeBron James. Like you appease your star player because that's what it takes in these leagues.
We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized, full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? They've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Tyreek Hill situation, Jeff. It obviously, was a big story on Sunday. Comes out that he's arrested. We end up finding out that a couple of his teammates end up being handcuffed as well. He ends up playing in the game, so we know he wasn't taken to jail and all those kind of things. And then the body camera footage comes out, right? That came out today, came out this morning as we tape here on a Tuesday. Tyreek Hill, more off the field drama. What's your reaction when you see this?
Not surprised. There's so many things happening with this story that annoy me. It's everybody, not everybody. A lot of people want to take a macro view of this and get it all into the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, driving while black conversation. And really, this is to me, it's a very specific situation with very specific details that have nothing to do with that. It's about a guy who got pulled over driving at a very high speed, was very disrespectful, pissed off the cops. Cops started to get pretty animated. I think both parties have blame to be shared here, but I've heard a lot of the conversation today, and I've really paid attention to a lot of the ex-players talking about it. And not one has ever said, Tyreek Hill made some mistakes here. It's all about the cops shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. It's like, again, in what world are we living in where you can drive high speeds, get pulled over by the cops? The first thing you say to him is, don't touch my window like that, or don't knock on my window like that, and then roll up your window that looks like Darth Vader's mask. You can't even see inside this thing. Like, a cop is going to sit there and say, am I going to get shot? Like, what's this guy have going on here? And it's just the victim card being played by him on this media circus tour now is just ridiculous. The way the Dolphins have responded, the way his agent has responded, is just like, this all comes back to how you acted and the reactions you created. And so for me, it's like, if I'm Brett Veach or Andy Reid, I'm like, thank God we're not dealing with this here. Because it would be such a, when they made the trade, I thought, hey, it's good for them to have the players. I honestly don't know if they would have won a championship with him on this roster, if he had stayed. I just don't know if they would have done it, because he can create so much drama.
I want to point something out here. Ryan immediately jumped on, what's high speed, 55 and a 40 or 45? And then he followed up with, the body cam showed you could see inside the window. Not clearly, right? And yes, could you make out that there was a person in there that he was moving around? Could you see the white T-shirt?
Yeah.
Yes. Could I see that he was going for a seatbelt? I could. Could I see what was in between his seat and something else? Did he have something in there? No. And I think, Ryan, that's kind of the point Jeff's making when he talked about the players. Nowhere in your comments does it say, yes, let's first and foremost say, he made mistakes, right? Like, I think people have these issues, and this is one of the things I kind of talked about with Sam today. They have you have your stance on the police, which every line of work can do better. And the police are one of them, and it's one of the more important ones, that you need to have restraint. And I think we all agree. I don't think anybody would look at that and say, and I know both of you guys have friends in law enforcement, more than I do. I have cops I'm friendly with, but no one that I do have a close friend but he lives in Baltimore. He's a Baltimore cop. But anyway, I think that's the whole point. Is like, yes, the police made mistakes. And if we want to talk about that, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the police can do better. Right. But there also needs to be the conversation about, yes, Tyreek Hill made mistakes, and Tyreek Hill can be better. And I think, Sam, that's one of the things. That's why I said there's been more drama off the field again. And we had to look it up today on the air about, like, when his house caught on fire, they ended up ruling that it was a child playing with a lighter. Well, clearly the child was not being supervised. If they set the house on fire, it's just like all these things that, yes, you can't be a career victim. Okay, you're doing something wrong. If you're constantly a victim, then you're doing something wrong. Yes, we want to have the conversation about the cop, yes, for sure. Especially the second copping could have done a lot better and could have had shown a lot more restraint. And it was Tyreek Hill the worst person on earth that day? No, but did he do things you shouldn't do? Hell yes, he did, right?
Yeah, I mean, these situations always require more nuance than I think people want to give them credit for. And, the way I described it on your show today, Soren, was that it's a situation of alpha personalities, and alpha personalities don't like backing down. It's one guy trying to out alpha the other guy, and they both come out looking bad. And I will say the first thing I always preface a conversation like this about is acknowledging this is not my expertise. I have never lived either situation. And Soren, I also brought this part up on air, but the first question we asked in our podcast group text was we asked Jeff what he thought, because he lives with a different experience in this situation than you and I live with. It's also why I do reach out to my friends who are cops and say, what's your take on this situation? Because they've been in that situation. I've never been in that situation. And I will say a lot of them were upset with the cops' reaction here and said that, the proper response is to back away from the car, withdraw your pistol, and then time's on your side here. So he's got to get out of the car. He's got to make a move. Your responsibility is to de-escalate the situation. You escalated the situation. Having said that, they are responding to a crime being committed. And then they're responding to the first response to that crime being committed is telling the cop what to do. Knock on my window. Don't do that to my window. And then not listening to the cop's instructions. And that's when, to Jeff's point, I can totally understand being fearful as a cop in that situation when you can't see what's going on inside of a car that you have pulled over. I don't think the punishment fit the crime. As far as the punishment of being tackled on the side, being thrown out of the car, I don't think that fit the crime. But to just take one side of it is something that I think is too frequent. We're seeing, to Jeff's point, if he actually watched that many people talk about it today and nobody criticized Tyreek Hill at all for this, that is disappointing. And I totally agree with his point that Tyreek Hill has somehow a few times in his life, because there's been a part of the story that has not been accurate with the way Tyreek Hill has been portrayed, he somehow has been the victim for the entire story. And we've missed the action that he's actually been responsible for.
Yeah. Ryan's firing off again about how he didn't have to get out of the car. Lots of people said that. He wouldn't have been asked to get out of the car if he just handed his registration and license to the officer. That's the point we're making. Yeah. Like, nobody is saying that everything was done right on the police side. I mean,
it was not right.
It was not. That is acknowledged. But there's also a matter of, listen, I've been pulled over, and you know what I want? I want to get on with my life. It sucks. Okay, I got a ticket. I got a handle. I got to deal with. So let me get I am ready, man. You pull me over, windows down, licenses in my hand, registration's in my hand, because I want you to write the ticket and I want to get on about my day. And I'm not going to be an a-hole, because I think there are some cops that I don't want to get pulled out of the car. I'm somewhat in fear, right? Just because it's not a situation we're all in. So don't make the situation worse. That's all we're saying. And that's I think he is. I think right now Ryan's kind of that perfect. It's just here's my agenda. Somewhere along the way, not others, you got to say, Tyreek could have avoided all this.
Yeah. And
also, do you want Tyreek Hill to be the poster child for that agenda? Do you want this instance to be the perfect example of the cops not handling this situation the exact right way?
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is, like, if I'm teaching I have an 11-year-old son, if I'm teaching him how to deal with a police stop, I'm not showing him that. That's actually a video on how not to do it. And I get that people have their experiences, and I get that people are triggered by things. And I totally understand the police have done a lot of things in this world that have been very, very harsh on people of color in these situations. But, and again, I don't want to discredit what Ryan is saying here. He's making some valid points. The point I want to make is that when you're in that situation, the police have the power. And sometimes people have a hard time accepting that or understanding it. Like Soren just said, I want to make sure I'm cooperating with you so I can get out of here. There are people who are actually acting like Tyreek Hill was cooperating at some point.
Right.
At no point was he cooperating in that process. And the fact that, okay, the 55 or 45, whatever, I don't want to quibble over details because we have a time situation here. If you watch that video and see every other car go past, he's like Superman speeding, to save a kid in a tree somewhere. Like whatever he was driving, it was 10 times faster than the people around him. And so that creates a concern and a danger for people around him. That's what I fully believe, and I don't know these cops, I don't know how it went down, that if he had rolled down his window and they had had a conversation, it would have never gotten to where it's at. And for context here, Miami Gardens, where Hard Rock Stadium is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Miami. That's where Stedman Bailey, an ex-NFL player, was shot because some guy came by his house and sprayed up the whole street. So it's like these cops deal with that stuff all the time. So pulling over a guy in an expensive car with his window up is not a recipe for feeling like, okay, I'm just going to take it easy here. Like you're going to get on edge if that happens to you.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think the bigger picture, not the bigger picture, I think the smaller picture is the football side of things. And I said it today, like you could not have, invested in, bought lower and sold higher at just the right time. Listen, they're human beings, but on the football player side, the equity side of what the football players, then the Chiefs getting in on a guy with a damaged reputation in the 5th round that has unbelievable physical talents. And I do want to point out, I am very impressed with Tyreek Hill's work ethic to make himself a great receiver, right? But they got in a guy who loved football and wanted to be good at football, got in on him at a 5th round pick, then had to put some money behind him while he was still having all kinds of off-field drama, did it, got great production still, won a championship, and then sold high and said, okay, now we don't need this drama because we now have 15 and we don't have to try to have the best at every position around him to try to find that little crack where you can win a championship when you don't have a great quarterback. Once they got the great quarterback, they said, we're flipping this. And I think you see the Dolphins have had nothing but drama, right? With Tyreek Hill since he's gotten there, whether it's his podcast comments, whether it's his numerous children that he's had with many different people, all of that is still, and let's point out, Calais Campbell, who was the NFL Man of the Year, was in handcuffs because Tyreek Hill was in this situation. Calais Campbell is not used to being in handcuffs and wouldn't have been in handcuffs had Tyreek Hill either followed the instructions, not been late, not been speeding, or had not been on this team. So let's point out there is collateral damage to his teammates when all this goes on.
Yeah. And I like Tyreek, and at times I've dealt with him, but and this is what the Chiefs knew when they traded him, that if he was not going to be happy with what they offered him, he was going to be a problem at some point. And what that video reinforced, it's a whole different situation, I know, is that if he wants to be a pain in the ass, you're not going to stop him from being a pain in the ass. It's going to be very hard to control him. And that's what I took away from that whole thing.
Yeah. If he wants to be a pain in the ass, he's going to be a pain in the ass. I think that'll be the caption. We should make that the title of the podcast. All right, we'll be back at it on Friday, where we will get into some of the matchups and break down more the Cincinnati Bengals. Remember, we're always brought to you by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. You can give David and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Gann Asphalt and Concrete for 30 years, solving parking lot problems in Kansas City. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And our friends at Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. Voted KC's #1 accident lawyers. Text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. For Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Gold and